Everyone is losing their mind about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. This includes experts from all across the globe. Check this out. Tim Bontemps from ESPN wrote out everything. Towns will immediately slot into New York's starting lineup at center, filling a massive need for the Knicks. Bontemps said, and I couldn't agree more. With Towns at center, this Knicks team just leveled up. Adding a big man like Towns is exactly what the Knicks need to solidify their roster. Towns, a four-time All-Star, has the offensive skills to make an immediate impact. He's averaging nearly 23 points per game and pulling down over 10 rebounds. That's exactly what we've been missing. Plus, he's a sharpshooter from beyond the arc, hitting almost 40% of his threes. The Knicks are getting a player who can stretch the floor, rebound, and score from anywhere. But it's not just about stats. This trade is about fit. Mitchell Robinson is out for at least 2 months, and there's a huge gap at center. Towns steps in perfectly to fill that role. What's even better, he's coming back home. Towns is from New Jersey, just an hour away from the Big Apple. He'll thrive under the spotlight of Madison Square Garden. And honestly, that's exciting. On the other hand, Minnesota is getting Julius Randle, who's been a beast for the Knicks. Randle's averaged nearly 25 points and 9 rebounds per game last season before a shoulder injury cut his year short. He's been a cornerstone for the Knicks, helping them make the playoffs 3 times in the last 4 seasons. It's hard to see him go, but I get it. The Wolves need his toughness and versatility to push them past last year's Western Conference Finals. Minnesota's also adding Dante, who's a lights-out shooter and adds even more depth to their lineup. The Knicks are set to add a center in Towns to shore up their biggest weakness, and Minnesota is adding shooting and versatility in its quest to exceed last season's run to the Western Conference Finals. Honestly, this trade is a win-win for both teams. The Knicks now have a legitimate shot to make noise in the Eastern Conference. With Towns teaming up with guys like Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, this squad is looking dangerous. I've always thought Towns had the potential to be a game changer, and now he'll have a chance to reach new heights. But it wasn't just ESPN. NBC called the Knicks the winner of the trade. Ultimately, it's this simple. The Knicks needed a center and just landed one of the best in the NBA. In this article, though, it says the Knicks are clear winners here. They've been eyeing Towns for a long time. And finally, he's heading to New York. Towns is an all-NBA caliber big man, and the Knicks needed help at the center position with Mitchell Robinson out due to injury. The author says, Towns is an all-NBA level big man who makes this team better. New York had its eye on the New Jersey native for years, and now needing help at the 5 because Mitchell Robinson is out recovering from surgery until around Christmas, and Isaiah Hartenstein left for a bigger paycheck in Oklahoma City. But the Knicks got one of the best in the game. Towns is exactly what the Knicks needed. Losing Randle stings, especially since he was a fan favorite, but it's a necessary cost to bring in a star like Towns. And sure, there are questions about Towns' ability to handle the defensive load in Tom Thibodeau's system, but come on, he's one of the best bigs in the game. But the article does claim the Timberwolves, short term, they're winners too. This trade was driven by financial reasons, and the luxury tax forced Minnesota to make a tough decision. Julius Randle and Dante bring a lot of value to the team. Randle is a beast inside, averaging 24 points and 9 rebounds last season, while Dante's shooting will help space the floor. The author notes, Randle knows how to get buckets. He's a bully ball player in the paint who averaged 24 points and 9.2 rebounds a game last season. He's also a ball stopper on offense who doesn't space the floor. So pairing him with non-shooting, Gobert will allow opposing teams to pack the paint and take away driving lanes for Edwards. So yeah, there are some concerns, but they still have talent and should remain competitive. However, long-term, things look a bit dicey for Minnesota. Once Randle's contract expires, the team will look different, and they might not be as good as they are now. This trade saved them money, but it also marked the end of an era with Towns. The Timberwolves are building around Anthony Edwards, who's the future of the franchise, but they'll need to figure out how the rest of the roster fits around him. The author sums it up perfectly by saying, Towns is an all-NBA level talent at center now playing in Manhattan, and once Randle is gone, this will be a very different team. And for the Nova Knicks, well, it's kind of a bummer. There was so much excitement about the idea of having 4 Villanova players, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and Dante, on one team. But before that dream could even come to life, Dante was shipped out in this deal. While it's sad, it was necessary to make the trade happen, and the Knicks are stronger for it. So while fans might be a little disappointed, there's no doubt the Knicks are now a serious contender in the East. Besides the heavy hitters like ESPN, I found a cool article from SB Nation where they graded the trade. They gave the Knicks an A. Ultimately, this trade makes the Knicks better. Towns is a phenomenal offensive talent who can play with or without Mitchell Robinson. New York is taking on a ton of long-term money with Town, but that's a problem for another day. The Knicks are trying to win their first title since 1973, and I think they got closer today. They are still behind the Celtics, though. That seems fair. The Celtics were the champions last season, but for the Wolves, they didn't like it as much. They gave them a C. Could the Wolves trade Randle in season for a player who fits better? Sure, maybe. But given the fact that the organization clearly wants to trim payroll, it won't be easy to find one. This trade makes Minnesota more sustainable at a time when they could have been trying to maximize their title odds. In reality, they were a long shot contender with Towns, and now feel like they are a little bit longer of a shot. It really is funny because everyone feels so differently about this. I also found a cool video from the Deep 3 podcast where they graded the trade as well.
Let's grade the ridiculous Karl-Anthony Towns to the Knicks trade.
I think I'm going to give the Timberwolves
B.
B minus.
They saved a lot of money and also a 40% three-point shooter with a cannon on him.
I'm giving them like a C, maybe C minus. They got worse now when they should be in contention. When Anthony Edwards is owed the opportunity to be in contention. They might have more flexibility in the future if they can trade Julius Randle. Not a certainty at all. I can't view this positively.
And then on the Knicks side, probably a C. I do think that defensively, this is going to take some time to work out.
Offensively, I think it's going to work, undoubtedly. Defensively, how much faith do you have in Tom Thibodeau? Do you think he's still one of the best defensive minds in the NBA?
I do.
Do you think Cat is one of the worst anchored bigs at the 5 in the NBA?
Yeah.
Which side are you going on? Is a genius defensive coach going to make him work?
Carl, listen. Hey, listen, you're here now.
Start purring, Donovan.
And if I'm the Celtics, I'm less scared of the Knicks now.
Hey,
Less scared of the Knicks.
let's not get started. Don't
You know what?
Don't piss me off
If
again.
I have Giannis on my team,
Don't piss
I'm
me off
also
again.
less scared of the Knicks.
Wow.
Don't piss me off again. Let's end this.
Donovan, you're not going to protect your new guy, Karl-Anthony
Wrap it
Towns?
up.
I want to stick to the grading, but I want to get a little different point of view. Let's check out each team's beat writers and what they think. The Timberwolves writers from dunkingwithwolves.com liked the trade a lot. They gave it a B+. Julius Randle is far from a perfect player. His brand of high volume, average efficiency scoring raises the floor, but limits the ceiling. He was already starting to settle into a role as the number 2 alongside Jalen Brunson and can continue that growth track in Minnesota. He is a willing shooter, a bully inside against smaller opponents, and a switch defender. He is also much cheaper than Towns, especially when you consider that the Wolves can either let him walk or re-sign him to a competitive offer. Dante, on the other hand, is under contract for many years to come at a bargain price and should be an obvious part of the rotation as a gunner and secondary playmaker. This all makes sense, and you can't blame the beat writers for enjoying the trade. Most fans of each team do. But what if we looked at a Knicks writer? This comes from SNY. They actually gave the Knicks a C-, which is very interesting. Here's their reasoning. The Timberwolves' most played lineups featuring Towns and no Gobert in 2023-24 got worked defensively and spanked by opponent. They may not have included OG and Bridges, but were plenty deep on the wings themselves. They were also pretty consistently out-rebounded. Again, something Hart and Precious can make up for. But to what degree? Fans may point to the Thibs effect in these instances, but he works best with guys who are already proficient and willing in these facets of the game, and his first go-around with Towns was a disaster. There's also a fair bit of injury concern as well. After playing nearly every game of his first 4 seasons, Towns has appeared in 35 games, 50 games, 74 games, 29 games, and 62 games since. It really is just so interesting how everyone sees this trade differently. Really though, all of the points are valid. Let's look at another ESPN article though. For this one, they asked 3 different insiders all the same questions. Ramona Shelburne, Chris Herron, and Bobby Marks. Let's look at the questions. For the question, what are league insiders saying about Towns' fit in New York? Here's what they had to say. Shelburne said this: the Knicks' biggest need was at center, following the departure of Isaiah Hartenstein, an injury to Mitchell Robinson, and they just filled it with the top 5 center in the league. Towns should help balance the scoring and space the floor with his career 39% three-point shooting. Makes sense? But then Chris Herring said this, that it obviously addresses the Knicks' question concerning who will hold down the center position, which was thin after losing Hartenstein in free agency and Robinson's ankle surgery that figures to hold him out for the next couple of months. Towns gives New York an incredible amount of spacing and scoring punch as a number 2 on offense, and he has experience playing in Thibs' defensive system. But at first blush, he lacks the rugged physical style that players like Randle and Dante brought to the team. That makes sense as well, and a valid take. Let's see what Bobby Marks said though. Seamless is one word that a team described to me about Towns' fit. The Knicks were desperate to get a center. Not only does Towns fill that void, but he also gives New York a true stretch five. Towns is one of 4 players to average 20 points, 50% shooting, and 40% on three-pointers last season. Factor in also that Towns already has a comfort level playing for Thibs after spending 3 years with the Knicks coach in Minnesota. So it seems they all like the scoring Towns brings, which makes a lot of sense, because he can get buckets. They did answer the same question for Randle though. Let's see what they said here. Shelburne said this. This trade is possible because Naz Reid has developed so well. He probably still comes off the bench, and there are questions about the spacing with Randle and Rudy Gobert. But Wolves coach Chris Finch is a fan of Randle, having coached him to a breakout season in New Orleans back in 2018-19. I can see Randle having a true breakout once again here. But after that, Herring had this to say, that the Wolves are taking a big picture approach. Randle figures to stay in Minnesota as he can opt out of his deal after this season. That reality gives Minnesota far more financial flexibility than it had under Towns' massive contract, which is in excess of $220 million. It's also noteworthy that this deal isn't just about Towns and Randle. DiVincenzo was fantastic last season and finished 3rd in the league in three-pointers. After Curry and Luka Doncic, he's on one of the NBA's best value contracts and will be a key part of the Wolves' rotation. It'll be really interesting, in my opinion, to see if Randle stays in Minnesota after the season. But after that, Marks did have this to say, whether the tenure of Randle in Minnesota is short-term or part of the future. Randle has a $30.9 million player option for next season and can become a free agent. He is eligible to sign a 4-year, $181 million extension 6 months after the trade is completed. For now, Randle gives Minnesota an all-NBA forward to complement Gobert and better roster flexibility moving forward. Before his shoulder injury last season, Randle had 19 straight 20-point games, the longest streak of his career. Yeah, Randle definitely is a bucket. There's no denying that, and none of them did deny that. But they were asked another major question. Who won the trade? Let's see who they said. Shelburne thinks the Knicks won. The Knicks, who have done nothing but go all in this summer by trading for Mikal Bridges, extending Jalen Brunson and OG, and now acquiring Towns. They now have 3 bona fide stars, all on the same timeline. Yes, they are right up against the second apron and have depleted their draft capital. But in today's NBA, this is about as well as a team can position itself to contend for several years. Okay, so she thinks the Knicks, but what about Herring? What's he think? Can I use a lifeline here? The truth is, I have no clue yet. I was excited to see how the Knicks looked with Bridges in the lineup, which will now include Towns, as opposed to Randle and Dante. A much different look and style. I do like Minnesota streamlining its ample big man rotation, and that it has more wing scoring at its disposal now. It has more cap flexibility going forward too. But I can't get over how massive a swing this is for both clubs, who seem to be on an upward trajectory without these deals. They'll be among the most interesting teams in the association this season. That is a good point. How can you really even pick yet? And Marks had a pretty similar answer. Can I answer this question in June? The Knicks continue to go all in with their roster, first trading 5 first-round picks for Bridges and then absorbing the $220 million salary owed to Towns. The positive, however, is that New York did not have to trade backup guard Deuce McBride as part of the deal and still has Josh Hart coming off the bench. As for Minnesota, it is still a top 4 team in the West, but how far it goes depends on the health of Randle. Randle had arthroscopic surgery on his left ankle last April and most recently underwent season-ending surgery to repair the dislocated shoulder he suffered in January. The addition of DiVincenzo brings stability and perimeter shooting to a young Minnesota bench. Last year with New York, Dante made 283 three-pointers, the most in a season in Knicks history. His 241 catch-and-shoot three-pointers last season were the most in the NBA per second spectrum. Dante really is a sniper, but overall, we got 1 Knicks pick and 2 I can't pick yet. Honestly, I can't wait for this season. This trade between the Knicks and Timberwolves is going to work out for both sides, and I'm honestly hyped to see how it plays out. The Knicks are bringing in Karl-Anthony Towns, and man, that's a huge upgrade for them. Towns is exactly what they need, especially with Mitchell Robinson out. That's massive. And don't sleep on the Timberwolves either. Julius Randle is a beast. He's been playing the best basketball of his career these past few years. Minnesota's getting some serious firepower with him and Dante. Randle's averaging over 24 points a game. Pair that with Dante's shooting, and they're about to go off. Plus, Randle and Chris Finch already have history together, so you know that chemistry is going to click right away. This trade just feels like it's balancing the scales. New York shores up their center position with Towns, who can do it all offensively, and the Timberwolves get even deeper with Randle and more shooting with Dante. It's going to be fun watching both teams go at it. I'm telling you, this move can push both squads further in the playoffs. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for this season to start. Both teams look stronger after this, and we're in for some seriously good basketball. Let's see how these new look squads come together. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. I'm going to be pushing out NBA content every day. Thanks for watching.